You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, political quiz time. Can you name the tax-hiking, government-expanding, latte-drinking, sushi-eating, Volvo-driving, New York Times-reading, body-piercing, Hollywood-loving, left-wing freak show friends of Howard Dean who recently issued the following pro-dope marijuana legalization quotes? Quote, I don't want to promote that, but I also don't want to put people in jail who make a mistake. There are a lot of young people who do this, and then later on in their 20s they grow up and get married, and they quit doing things like this. I don't want to put them in jail and ruin their lives. Look, the last 2 presidents could conceivably have been put in jail for their drug use, and I really think, look what would have happened. It would have ruined their lives. They got lucky, but a lot of poor kids, particularly in the inner city, don't get lucky. They don't have good attorneys, and they go to jail for these things, and I think it's a big mistake. End quote. That would be Republican Senator Rand Paul. How about this one? Quote, I am proud to introduce legislation with my friend Rand Paul that will allow Kentucky farmers to harness the economic potential that industrial hemp can provide. During these tough economic times, this legislation has the potential to create jobs and provide a boost to Kentucky's economy and to our farmers and their families. End quote. That would be Republican Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. How about this one? Quote, to be clear, I do not consider marijuana use a good thing for society, but I have never used marijuana personally and do not encourage others to indulge. But as the son of a violent alcoholic, I know enough to appreciate that it is irrational to have laws in place that allow the use of alcohol, yet punish adults who choose to use a less harmful and less dangerous substance. Across the board, our current system of marijuana prohibition has failed. It has failed to protect our kids from drug dealers pushing other, far more dangerous drugs. It has failed to keep our borders safe. And it has failed to use taxpayer dollars in the most responsible and efficient manner possible. It is time to try something new. Please join me in voting yes on Colorado's Marijuana Legalization Amendment 64 this November. That would be Republican former Representative Tom Tancredo. And how about this one? Quote, I really believe we should treat marijuana the way we treat beverage alcohol. I've never used marijuana and I don't intend to, but it's just one of those things that I think this war on drugs just hasn't succeeded. If people can go into a liquor store and buy a bottle of alcohol and drink it at home legally, then why do we say that this use of this other substance is somehow criminal? End quote. That would be Republican former presidential candidate Pat Robertson. Hardly the latte-drinking body-piercing set, huh? Now, to be fair, the Democratic Party still has a larger base of support for marijuana reform, at least in the U.S. House. Representative Jared Polis of Colorado, Representative Earl Blumenauer of Oregon, and Representative Steve Cohen of Tennessee are solid supporters of marijuana rights in the U.S. House. But while the Senate Minority Leader McConnell is on Fox News supporting hemp and recent filibuster star Senator Rand Paul is on Fox News calling for ending marijuana prohibition, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is silent on the issue. Democratic senators are notorious for opposing marijuana rights even when the voters of their own states are in majority disagreement with them. Sure, Senators Wyden and Merkley from Oregon are standing with Senators McConnell and Paul on the hemp issue, but when marijuana legalization was on the Oregon ballot, Wyden and Merkley wouldn't comment on the measure, though Wyden has issued anti-legalization stands in the past. When marijuana legalization was on the Washington ballot, Senator Maria Cantwell opposed it, saying, quote, I don't believe marijuana should be legalized for recreational purposes. Senator Patty Murray, another Democrat, opposed Initiative 502 as well, echoing her 2009 statement to a constituent, quote, I do not support legalizing or decriminalizing currently illegal drugs, including marijuana, end quote. When marijuana legalization was on the Colorado ballot, Senator Michael Bennet, another Democrat, supported the No on 64 campaign with his, quote, a constitutional amendment to make this type of change leaves cause for concern. Looking at this as a parent, it goes too far, end quote. Senator Mark Udall, another Democrat, made no comments about the Amendment 64 campaign that I could find, but he has in the past co-sponsored the States' Rights to Medical Marijuana Act. When California was voting on Prop 19 in 2010, Senator Barbara Boxer, Democrat, was against it, and Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat, was chairing the committee to oppose it. I've been warning Democrats that Republicans would steal this issue and its younger supporters since the drug war was invisible at Barack Obama's 2008 Democratic National Convention in Denver, which I attended and blogged for. I was credentialed there. Since that convention, 4 Western states have voted on marijuana legalization, and their 8 Democratic senators have either opposed it or not supported it. Now, I'm not the only one who's now recognizing that a GOP with an aging and soon-to-be white minority could gain much-needed younger voters by openly supporting marijuana rights. Nate Cohn, writing for the uber-conservative New Republic, agrees. Quote, young voters might be pro-Obama, but they're even more pro-marijuana. While 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds supported the president's reelection, the CBS News and Quinnipiac polls, as well as the Washington, Colorado exit polls, show an impressive 65 to 70% of voters under age 30 supporting marijuana legalization. Fortunately for Republicans, they actually have a rare opportunity here to seize the middle ground and appeal to younger voters. CBS News found that 65% of Republicans support allowing state governments to determine the legality of marijuana, compared to just 29% who believe the federal government should decide. Marijuana's ascent as a national issue will force Republicans to choose between breaking with the conservative base or undermining their efforts to rejuvenate support from young voters, who so far have only shown interest in libertarian-leaning Republicans like Ron Paul. If Republicans don't seize the middle ground on marijuana legalization, Democrats will eventually use the issue to their advantage. Not only will Democratic primary voters demand it, they will have a lot to gain. As more younger pro-marijuana voters enter the electorate and replace their elders, support for marijuana legalization will continue to increase, absent intervening events that reshape public opinion, like a disastrous ending to the experiments in Colorado or Washington. If marijuana becomes another partisan social issue, like gay marriage or abortion, it will make it even more difficult for Republicans to appeal to millennial voters. And again, that's Nate Cohn in the New Republic. States' rights, limited government, cut wasteful spending, personal responsibility, individual freedom. There's 5 bumper sticker Republican philosophies you could put on an end federal marijuana prohibition flyer at a GOP convention in 2016. Meanwhile, as Senate Democrats out west are ambivalent to or outright opposing marijuana legalization in their states, on the East Coast, Democratic Senator Warren from the liberal bastion of Massachusetts is openly mocking her potential Republican opponent's support of marijuana legalization. She said this recently, quote, I advise everyone to pay very close attention to Dan Winslow's platform. He has a 100% ranking from the gun lobby, and he's for the legalization of marijuana. He wants us armed and stoned, end quote. So what was it that Massachusetts Republican State Representative Dan Winslow stood for that deserved Senator Warren's derision? This is his platform, or this is his quote. I disfavor decriminalization of marijuana because it increases demand from illicit sources. Instead, I think we need to legalize marijuana, likely starting with medicinal marijuana in view of the current federal prohibition, and then regulate it and tax it. Only by lawful production of marijuana will the cartels, crooks, and drug dealers be put out of business in the U.S. Senate Democrats had better heed the demographic and voting realities of the marijuana legalization issue, or the Republicans, desperate for younger and minority voters, will turn this into a social wedge issue in their favor. So far in the Senate, the only good news we really have is Senator Patrick Leahy on this issue, who's on the Judiciary Committee, who's put some good stuff forward and good quotes forward on ending this drug war, and has always been strong on it. Merkley and Wyden in Oregon have stood for this industrial hemp, but are so far mum on what's going on with legalization, when even in their own state, Oregon state representatives right now are talking about a legalization bill, passing it through the legislature to take advantage of the economic opportunities and the job opportunities and the farming opportunities that marijuana would provide. We need to be careful here, by we I mean Democrats, need to be careful here if they're if they are reticent on this issue, the GOP will steal it. Pat Robertson has already given them cover with the Christian conservatives. Libertarians and business-minded Republicans are ready to make some money from marijuana. Even seniors are beginning to see the medicinal and recreational benefits of cannabis. After all, marijuana legalization got 50,000 more votes in Colorado than President Obama did. And as Cohn at the New Republic wrote, quote, young voters might be pro-Obama, but they're even pro-marijuana. While 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds supported the president's reelection, the CBS News and Quinnipiac polls, as well as the Washington and Colorado exit polls, show an impressive 65 to 70% of voters under age 30 supporting marijuana legalization. Time to get on the right side of history, Democrats, and stand for this issue. Nancy Pelosi in the House has also been good on this issue, standing for some of these rights. And again, we mentioned Cohen and the other representatives in the House, Polis, Representative Blumenauer, these other representatives that are doing a good job for this in the U.S. House. But so far, leadership in the Senate has been silent. And in this vacuum, Rand Paul is stepping up and starting to issue some fairly reasonable statements on marijuana reform. It's time for the Democrats to get behind this issue and for both houses of the Congress to do something about the issue of marijuana at the federal level. There's an argument to be made from it from the conservative standpoint of states' rights, allowing the states to make these decisions, which even conservatives have come to support. There's arguments on the Democratic side of the aisle for ending this as well. The NAACP has now been getting along with some of the California and Colorado and Pacific Northwest delegations of their state NAACPs to support marijuana legalization. They see it as a civil rights issue. This would be so easy for Democrats to jump on as a civil rights issue, an equal justice issue, a fairness issue. It's ripe for the picking. It's the low-hanging fruit of electoral politics right now. And as Washington and Colorado continue to implement their laws, there's going to be less and less public opposition to candidates coming up with reasonable stands on the issue. If you're on the left, if you're into Democratic politics, I would encourage you to get involved at the primary level and have these primary challengers come up and force the issue of marijuana legalization. You can work within your party to make these changes. If you're with Green Party, if you're on the left but unaffiliated with the major political party, this has always been an issue that you've supported, and you can continue to raise the issue. If you're on the right, you can make this an issue that can be brought up at the conservative level. Tea Party Republicans should be behind this. Libertarians are already quite behind this. It's ripe for the picking, and the first party to get behind it in the right way will claim the moral high ground. The other party will begin to look like bandwagoneers. They'll lose the status of being associated with the party for legalization. Just as we've seen a one-decade turnaround in institutional politics with respect to the gay marriage issue, where just 10 years ago it was all the rage to use it as a wedge to force voters into the Republican column, and now it's being seen as a wedge that forces people to vote Democratic. We're now seeing majority support for gay marriage. The marijuana issue will be just like this. As the money starts to be made, as the people start making that money in Washington and Colorado, there's going to be more and more call at the state level for this to happen. President Obama, Democratic leader Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi on the Democratic in the House, use this momentum, make this change during the Obama administration, and Democrats can claim some of the mantle of being on the right side of history. Ignore this warning. The 2014 and 2016 elections might not turn out how you'd like. Hey, that's all the time we got here for Hour 1. We're going to go into Hour 2. Toker Talk Radio. We'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. Appreciate all of you for being here, and especially Wiz Khalico for showing up. Thank you so much, my man.
Mahalos for having me, my man. Always glad to be back. We'll have to do it again soon.
Just like old times.
At least once before I move out of here.
I agree. Good luck in Hawaii. For Wiz Khalico and Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke